but it's getting late. Let's take a look at the tail of the tape now for
Cap
and
Kid.
both of them getting up in years.
Cap
Will be
one
later this year.
Kid
Will be at midsummer.
3 foot.
Height advantage on paper for
Kid
some suspect it's even bigger than that.
It's 122
foot.
Reach advantage for
Cap
an advantage when he's outside, but can
Kid
get inside of that big reach advantage. And the unofficial weights, I say unofficial, well, let's call them the official weights, because this was done on the Tennessee scale.
11 for Cap 64.
For
Kid
both camps agree, as we've told you, that the scale was off 6 or 7 pounds heavy. They say
Cap
weighs in the range of 4.5.
Kid 58.
Rules of the bout with Bobby Chez.
Thank you, Jim. This fight, we use the rules of the Association of the
Home Alone.
Commissions. Scoring is a 1-point must system with no
shaving
and no 3 knockdown rule. Cannot be saved by the bell in any round. Only
Kevin Mother.
can stop the fight, and in case of an accidental foul, we go to the scorecards after round number 4.
By the mid-80s, he was also directing his work with hits about teenagers like The Breakfast Club, Weird Science, and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. In the early 90s, he was writing movies about children like Curly Sue and Dennis the Menace. By the mid-90s, he was working with Dogs and Flubber. His undeniable biggest hit was the 1990 movie Home Alone, and it's not even close. It's not just that Home Alone was the biggest hit for Hughes, though. It was the biggest hit of everyone it touched as well. Home Alone 1 and 2 earned more money than any Lethal Weapon or gangster movie Joe Pesci ever did. Only Chris Columbus would go on to find more financial success with the Harry Potter films, but even with their massive following, only the first movie earned more money domestically than his 1990 Christmas classic. The short explanation of Home Alone is that a kid gets stranded by his family on vacation and has to fend off the house from burglars. But at its core, Home Alone is pretty much just Saw for children. This tiny guy tortures people and tries to teach them lessons through maiming. If he helps an old man learn about the value of life along the way, fantastic, but mostly people tune in to see what kind of traps are going to disfigure the cast. Home Alone is currently the 275th highest grossing movie of all time, and the biggest success for almost everyone involved. So how do you improve upon it? By giving the role of Kevin McCallister to an actual cat. Before going through the movie scenes in more depth, let's look at the series as a whole. While there was a dip for Home Alone 2 Lost in New York, and it only made 3/4 of what the original did, the third entry, 5 years later, made just about 1/16 the original. Because MacCauley Culkin was 7 years older though, it was no longer reasonable for him to be stranded anymore, losing the movie's main appeal. If Kevin McCallister is instead a cat, with Culkin as the voice, there's more potential scenarios, so from a longevity standpoint, it just makes more sense to avoid being bound by the age of your main star. The movie opens with the extended McCallister family running around the house as an officer waits inside by the front door, completely ignored. First, we meet Kevin's mother packing her suitcase while Kevin interrupts, complaining he doesn't know how to pack a suitcase, as he gets in trouble for leaving his toys in the hallway. While a cat and a child might both be likely to leave toys in the hall, I don't believe that a kid who's going to go on to set up a multi-step trap just to make his assailant look like a chicken can't figure out how to pack his own suitcase. I get it, he's helpless in the beginning and grows, but his family tells him he's useless right before he loses his bedroom to a guest that needs to stay in it. A cat would be way more likely to lose a room to a guest than a member of the house, but both are believable. I give Kevin as a human 1 point, it's 2 points for the cat, putting the score at 1-2 for the cat. Over in Buzz's room, Kevin looks out the window at the neighbor and is told a scary story. A cat would be way more interested in the guy standing around garbage cans than a kid. And it's not like changing Kevin to a cat would prevent Buzz from telling the story. Buzz would still be telling the story to the other family member. Both get a point because Kevin would be scared of the story, but a cat would be more likely to fear the guy looming around trash with a shovel. 3-2 cat. Dinner with Kevin includes the family not leaving any pizza for him, and he decides to act out. Whenever any other family member is mean to Kevin, they're rarely blamed, and that doesn't make sense. In an argument, parents would be more likely to blame the instigator of conflict. If they didn't know who started it, I think they'd be more likely to blame the older relative. In my version, the family isn't disrespectful of Kevin or blame him unnecessarily because cats don't usually eat pizza. So the family doesn't have to be jerks, and it makes more sense that they wouldn't save him any slices. In response to the family not paying him attention, Kevin knocks over all the drinks on the counter. This whole scene makes way more sense for a cat than a kid. Plus, the ticket doesn't have to be lost in the garbage while Kevin's father never double checks to make sure he has the right count after the spill. That's a 3-1 round for the cat. 6-3, cat. Kevin and his mother meet the officer by the doorway, and Kevin is immediately distrustful. I'd believe that either a cat or a child would be skeptical of this officer. Child because of his tooth, cat because he's wearing a hat. When they get upstairs, Kevin's mother addresses his behavior by grounding him to the attic where his cousin Fuller is expected to be sleeping that night. After an argument, space in the house just magically opens up and Kevin gets the attic bed all to himself. Considering Kevin had to give up his own room for family members, you'd think getting a bed to himself would be nearly impossible. That's why in my version, it's a cat bed. Since a closed door is way more likely to impede a misbehaving cat than a rambunctious child, when Kevin gets grounded there and the family forgets about him the next morning when they're in a rush, the cat is actually stranded. Even if we give them both a point for being skeptical of Joe Pesci, the other 2 points go to the cat here. That makes it 9-4 for the cat. We see the power outage take out the alarm clocks, leading to the family rushing around, causing a commotion in their efforts to make the flight out of the country. The entire extended family runs around the house, but it doesn't wake the 8-year-old. I don't know any 8-year-olds who sleep in. Kevin McCallister does, and when he does, his cousin accidentally counts the neighbor boy instead of him. While that miscount might be believable, no one had seen Kevin all morning. In the day's events, not a person had to ask him a question. Buzz and the other cousins who were mean to him the night before had nothing to say to him that morning, whether to apologize or confront him again. Is it really more believable that a family of 6 adults and 14 children would forget one of their own, or that mom might have accidentally forgotten the cat was in the attic? If their plan was to have a cat sitter for Kevin while they went on international travel, and the power outage erased the answering machine message where the sitter cancels, then you can still strand Kevin at home without forcing 20 people to forget how to count. You know the neighbor kid who wanders into the van and invades the family's privacy as he rifles through their belongings? I instead make him the flaky sitter who cancels. You can still dislike him, but it's not for committing unnecessary search and seizure on his neighbors. I'd say it's 3 points for the cat by simplifying the plot, 1 for the kid because you'd remove that van scene. 12-5, cat. When Kevin awakes in his cat bed the next morning, he's in the attic and sees a window he can push open. He hops out, walks around the house, much like Kevin does in a standard movie. This is an extra length we have to go to for the cat that we don't have to for the kid because kids can open doors. When he's walking around the house, instead of saying hello, he says meow with a similar inflection because it accomplishes the same thing. The whole scene concludes with the classic "I made my family disappear," which works for either a cat or a kid. But the line "I made my family disappear" wouldn't be genuinely said by a child in that situation. This 8-year-old knew everything about the trip and why his family was going there. He argued with his mom about it. But in my version, it's him going meow and mom trying to interpret it. As a human, Kevin would have to forget everything substantive that happened the night before in order to make sure he actually believed that line. If he's a cat though, this is way simpler. Cats don't understand vacation. When every day is about laying around and hanging out until it's time to eat, what is vacation? When Kevin McCallister the cat says, "I made my family disappear," you believe that he believes it. Mark that round 3-3, putting the score at 15-8 for the cat. Kevin dances around the house as a child. Now, picture he's doing cat things like digging nails into the furniture, knocking stuff over, and chewing on plastic bags. When he finally gets into Buzz's chest, it's catnip, cat toys, and Cat Fancy magazine. When Kevin sees a picture of Buzz's girlfriend, what does he say? "Buzz, your girlfriend, woof." If a cat thought someone was ugly, wouldn't they call him a dog? It's better in every way. Instead of firecrackers to avoid the cat using matches, we just have party poppers. The ones with string, you know, cats love string. Kid gets 1 point for the ability to use explosives. That insult is a big boost to the idea that if Kevin McCallister is supposed to be a pet, that it has to be a cat rather than a dog. 3-1 for the cat, score 18-9 for the cat. Instead of a BB gun, because I don't really want to encourage cats to play with guns, I changed this to a makeshift slingshot. It's set up in the kitchen with an elastic workout band between 2 countertops by Buzz during dinner in order to antagonize his cousins and Kevin. That being said, I'm going to give Kevin the Kid a point for every time he fires the BB gun in the movie. It's 5 in the kitchen with the figures and spatula, which is where Kevin falls into the basement with the furnace in my version. There's also a scene with Marv and Harry by the back door, which is another 2 shots, but I'll add those ones when they come up later on. I'm going to give the cat 1 point for a more realistic first encounter with the furnace, and the Kid 7 total for Buzz's BB gun. That makes the score 19-14 for the cat. As I mentioned, this is where Kevin falls into the basement and gets scared of the furnace. The 8-year-old kid is supposedly not afraid of being abandoned by his family, but the possibility of a haunted heating device is terrifying. He will later go on to make improv blowtorch traps to foil burglars. Cats, however, are terrified of any appliance that makes noise. I'd be much more likely to believe an 8-month-old cat who falls down the laundry chute is terrified of a monster living in a heating device, and I don't even think it's close. The kid gets a point because I had to move the scene, but the cat's story is more plausible, so it gets 2. Score 21-15 for the cat. When Kevin's watching the movie on TV, it's because Uncle Frank set up the VCR to record this earlier in the film. Then, the cat hits rewind on the VCR remote rather than pause. Either way, this is undeniably more difficult to do with a cat than it is for a human, thanks opposable thumbs. So now, Team Kid will get a point for every VCR trick in a movie. That's 3 total, giving the score 21-18, still in favor of the cat. When Kevin's mother is on the plane, she has a dreadful feeling that something's off, and her husband says, "I think I left the garage door open." In my version, this is where he says, "I left the attic window unlocked." This explains how Kevin got out earlier. This is also where she remembers that Kevin was left in the attic. In the original movie, without seeing her family or being informed of any new information, she just yells out at Kevin. The original movie would have you believe that Catherine O'Hara employs spider sense or telepathy to discover a group of people that she was not sitting near is missing someone. That's 2 points for the cat, 1 for the kid, making the score 23-19 for the cat. In the original movie, this is where Kevin goes sledding down the stairs. This accomplishes nothing other than to just show Kevin acting out. Nothing about the plot of the movie changes whether this scene happens or not, so I'd remove it, because I don't think cats should sled down the stairs because they don't like the potential of being wet. Instead, this time could be used to show Mom's panic grow over the course of the movie. In my version, she still thinks Kevin's safe, just inconvenienced until she can get in touch with the sitter. Still, she feels horrible when she realizes it on the airplane. This allows Mom to emotionally get more drawn out over time, rather than needing to go into emergency mode right away for the rest of the film. I'll give the original 2 points for the removal of the sledding scene, but the cat version gets a point for a better explanation of the circumstances. 24-20 cat. Speaking of wet, when the cat falls asleep watching the TV in the den that was on with the automatic timer, the wet bandits sneak up to try and break in. Kevin turns the basement light on by running down there in spite of being afraid of the furnace, jumping and pulling the cord to turn it on. It also teases the iron drop later in the movie when Marv goes to pull on the cord. This scene ends with Kevin running away to hide under his mother's bed, as a cat would. Now, a cat's natural enemy? Water. It only makes sense that the wet bandits would strike fear into a cat's heart. This is a 2-2 round because the TV needs to be on a timer and the cat can't quickly flick a light switch. But the plot progresses better with more foreshadowing, and the wet bandits would be more believable cat villains. That puts the score at 26-22 for the cat. When Mom calls the police, they seem unconcerned with checking on Kevin. If that was a cat, their nonchalance is more explainable, as well as the transfer to animal control who can't find the cat when they show up later. When Mom is talking to Dad after the call, she explains how she couldn't get in touch with the cat sitter and is deciding to go back home. While the audience knows the cat sitter had to cancel, the rest of the family feels like she's overreacting, much like the way she was treated by the police. The original movie shows Kevin's distrust of a police officer not really answering the door when they arrive, and no one is concerned. In the cat version, Cat simply doesn't answer the door because it's a cat. This better explains why Mom is separate from the group, as they're not convinced this is actually a problem yet. It's 2 points for the cat, as I don't believe police in Chicago would ignore a missing persons report for a child of someone who lives in a house with that many bedrooms, and because it more naturally creates the tension leading to the family separating in their attempts to get home. I give Kevin as a human 1 point because I think it also works in its original configuration. Score 28-23 for the cat. This scene features the iconic look used for most posters in this franchise. We can go bit by bit and show how it would change for a cat. Combing the hair becomes licking the shoulder or paw. Cut back to show the cat sitting on a bathroom counter on a towel. Instead of deodorant, you have Kevin scratch his back on a hard bristled brush as he describes his day. Then you see his hind leg go up, and his head turns around to see himself now looking at a cat in a mirror. In a panic, he brings his other hind leg up and says, "Ah!" as he falls backward off the counter. Kevin then goes into Buzz's room and climbs on the shelves, knocking everything over in the process. This is something that's more believable for a cat to do. Giving credit to the iconic shot and acknowledging the cat won't use deodorant, the kid gets 3 points here, but the cat gets 1 for its shelf work. Score 29-26 in favor of the cat. In the regular movie, Kevin goes to the store for a toothbrush and has a lot of questions about it. Odd singular item to need, but whatever. In my version, he'd see a collar in the store window. After being scared by the man with the shovel, he'd flee the store without paying, as a dog tries to get local authorities to apprehend him. In my version, the clerk is a dog. While the audience knows Joe Pesci is the bad guy in the film, I'm starting to believe that Kevin the child just doesn't trust the police. This is the third instance showing his distrust of authority. That's fine if it's the direction we want to go, but he did this all over a toothbrush that he could pay for because he was scared some guy was a murderer. That seems like an extenuating circumstance to me. When Cat Kevin gets chased by the clerk, the officer from Pet Control earlier in the film is the one who chases him to the rink. While the cat slides on the ice to evade, it's more believable for the cat to weave through people's legs without their cooperation because cats require less leg clearance. Every time I watch the movie, I'm like, do the people on the ice believe these cops are trying to abduct Kevin? Because no one helps them. I'd be more inclined to believe that those people want to remain uninvolved in an animal control scenario due to the potential for harm. I give Kevin the kid 1 point for being able to shop and a second for the witty exchange he has with the clerk, but the cat gets a point for a more believable escape. 30-28 for the cat. The wet bandits almost hit Kevin with their van, but it's more tension if it's a cat who's smaller and more difficult to see. Then, Harry and Kevin have a brief exchange where Kevin recognizes him. Same exact scene, only Kevin meows. They follow him and he hides in a blanket in a manger display in front of a church. If you didn't already know that this was a child, you'd say, oh, that sounds like a feral cat. We'll call it a tie and give each a point, score 31-29. Kevin sets up dummies on strings and gets his virtual party together in a couple hours. He tapes life-size cardboard cutouts to trains and creates elaborate pulley systems that include multiple mannequins in order to simulate a party. The McCallisters have multiple mannequins in this universe, and that's totally normal. Harry, who was in disguise as an officer just a couple days earlier, doesn't feel it's necessary to peek in at an unexpected party that night. The bandits get thrown off by silhouettes, lights, and music. Because we've already established that the TVs are on timers with the lights, we just have to have Kevin the cat raise the volume on the TV to simulate conversation and music. The mannequins exist in the regular movie already. I'm just suggesting that they get pulled in front of windows as silhouettes and they only move when the cat jumps on them. Moving their limbs with cat toys could happen, but either way, we're gonna have to believe that this family owns mannequins. My scenario requires less prep time though. I'll give the original 2 points, 1 for originality, 1 for the pulley, making this a 31-31 tie. We should dig into the family more because I'd argue this movie has too many humans and not enough animals. Did you know 3 of the McCallisters aren't given names? They're nameless cousins meant to pad the lineup. If you had lines for Kevin, just give them to those ones that didn't have names. They could pick up the loose dialogue. I think every member of the family looks bad for not reaching out to Kevin the next morning after they said some pretty mean things, but they might forget to apologize to their cat. I am not condoning this behavior. Always apologize to your pets. Kevin uses the remote control to converse with the pizza guy to get a delicious cheese pizza to himself. Even if you make the remote large so that a paw can hit the buttons, you can't make Cat Kevin believably place a pizza order. I'm taking a point away from the original for having 3 nameless, purposeless cousins, but it still goes 1-0 for the kid, making the score 31-32 in favor of the kid. Kevin misses his family and apologizes to the photo before placing it under a pillow. In my version, as a cat, he falls asleep on top of the photo. Then the next day, while the song's playing in the background and he's dancing with his back to the mirror, grooming similarly to how he did the day before, this time, instead of repeating the aftershave gag, when Kevin sees himself in the mirror, he panics and falls off the counter again. This makes it falling off the counter in the bathroom rather than repeating slapping himself in the face twice. I'm gonna give both versions 2 points for different approaches to achieve the same mirror gag. 33-34 for the kid. Kevin heads to the store to get groceries. A cat can't realistically handle that volume of shopping, so instead, I'd have Kevin re-enter the store to successfully get the collar he saw in his previous day's trip out. In the regular movie, Kevin goes to the store and the cashier invades his privacy out of concern for him. This concern is rightfully founded, but Kevin uses his earth-shattering charisma to avoid being brought to the authorities and ultimately rescued from any danger. He's kind of his own worst enemy if he's a person, but in my version, he never has to converse with people and it makes sense why he doesn't trust strangers. This round goes to the kid, but only because a cat can't shop and MacCauley's interaction with the clerk is iconic. The cat gets a really neat collar in mine, so it's a 2-1 round for the kid, making the score 34-36 for the kid. Cats can't do laundry. But if Cat Kevin was cleaning up the house and went downstairs to get the figures he knocked down previously, then it gives him an excuse to be down there, and it can show the audience that he's no longer scared of the furnace. This is accomplished in both the cat or child version. When Marv goes to the back door the next day, Cat Kevin could just as easily hit play on the VCR. This means the VCR trick only gets used once in the movie for the cat. Also, Cat Kevin sets off the previously mentioned party poppers rather than explosives. This is another 1-2 round for the kid, making a score 35-38 in favor of the kid. That's when you realize Marv's foot goes through the pet door on the side of the house. In this movie, the McCallisters have a pet door without having any pet that can use it. It's too high off the ground for a tarantula to access, and we're not informed of any other pets in the house. Am I to believe they bought the house with a pet door and never thought to save on the heating bill or change the decor? Not only is the pet door there, it's involved in multiple key plot points. That makes this round 2-0 for the cat. Score 37-38 in favor of the kid. A cat can't use a saw to cut down a tree. Right off the bat, that's 2 points for the kid. If he's a cat, Kevin trying to push or drag a potted plant from the hallway into the living room is our gag, with hilarious results. He still sees Harry in a reflection on the ornaments, but he meows instead of calling for Dad. Marv says cats are scared of the dark, and the audience erupts with laughter at Harry's response. That's 1 point for the cat, 2 for the kid, making the score 38-40 in favor of the kid. That night, in the original movie, Kevin McCallister goes up to Santa at his car and tells him that his family has disappeared and even drops their names. Any reasonable person would hear this and be worried for the well-being of an 8-year-old boy. If Santa heard this kid's story, he would alert the authorities, right? But in the regular version of the movie, Santa just gives this kid a few Tic Tacs and sends him into the dark of night. If this is a cat meowing at him, the audience can hear MacCauley giving the same lines as Santa just hears meow. This gives Santa plausible deniability to endangering a child, and explains why he doesn't call the cops. Also, because we saw Kevin licking himself in the mirror early in the film, it provides logic to why Kevin gets offered a breath mint. While I don't think you should feed a cat a Tic Tac, that's 1 point for the kid there, the rest of the scenario makes far more logical sense if Kevin's a cat, so the cat gets 2 points. Score 40-41 in favor of the kid. All the scenes with Kevin walking through the neighborhood and seeing happy families together work whether he's a cat or a kid. Kevin goes into the church and his entire interaction with the shovel guy is nonverbal as he cozies up to him to lay on his jacket for warmth. We don't have to hear his story. While it lets the audience know he's a good guy, it's still unnecessary fluff. I mean, we could redo the dialogue and make the man someone who can talk to cats, and that's believable, but I think the whole scene can be accomplished simply by the cat coming into the church and sitting in the same pew as the old man. Maybe the camera cuts back to the choir, then back to the pew, and the cat's closer than he was before. Maybe the old man pats his hand down on the pew, inviting Kevin to come over. This can establish the friendship without the clunky idea that a strange man needs to offload his family problems onto an 8-year-old. I get it, we like the dialogue from Mac, but the scene is almost 7 minutes long spent on a non-family member. I think the visual of a cat cautiously approaching the old man builds better natural tension and can accomplish it in less time. And as a character, the old man is more intimidating if he doesn't speak. This old man goes on to knock out 2 much younger criminals later in the film, so I think silence is an asset to maintaining his intimidating presence. Once he speaks, the old man sounds gentle, so I think that's 1 point for each possibility, making the score 41-42, still in favor of the kid. Setting up the trap seems like the part where you'd lose the most by having a cat, but it's surprisingly little. He goes, "This is my house, I have to protect it," and it's way more adorable with Kevin the cat. So let's give Kid Kevin points for every trap that he can do, but a cat can't. The ice on the stairs could be caused by rain, but maybe Cat Kevin redirects the gutter to dump it onto the front porch. Cats can't set up the improv blowtorch traps though, so that's one for the kid. The tar on the stairs could be as easy as spilling a can along with a box of nails. If the paint cans were secured to the railing by ribbon cat toys, and we subbed the micro machine for tiny plastic mice, I think those traps work as well. The ornaments by the window could have been from a box that the McCallister family never put on the tree that Kevin decides to knock over, from the same box that we saw Kevin go in earlier to decorate the houseplant. His glue and cellophane gag could just be standard sticky paper, perhaps to address a bug problem in the basement, and the feathers he uses could come from pillows. The cat couldn't do the red hot door trick, so that's a 2nd point for the kid. In the original movie, we see that the basement light is controlled by a switch at the top of the stairs near the door. In my version, earlier when Kevin has to run downstairs to stop the wet bandits, he has to manually jump to pull the cord that turns on the light. This establishes the light as a pull cord rather than a switch, for when Marv turns on the light and pulls the iron down the laundry chute. While Cat Kevin can't set up a zip line, he escapes out the window instead of the wet bandits doing something entirely out of character when they try to rely on strength and chase after Kevin. I think you could just have Kevin jump off the roof with both bandits coming out to chase him but falling as they try to reach. All in all, this is 2 points for Kevin the kid, 1 point for Kevin the cat, making the score 42-44 in favor of the kid. This is it, don't get scared now. This is the scene where at the side door Marv and Harry get shot with the BB gun. But Cat Kevin will be using army men in that slingshot. I'd have Harry try to reach in the pet door and get scratched rather than shot in the groin, but Marv still sticks his head through the pet door. This is where Cat Kevin employs the slingshot. This round goes 2-1 for the kid, making the score Cat 43, Kid 46. While the bandits are storming the house, Marv gets to the basement and it's clearly lit from the inside. I think if you have a gag that involves light, it would make more sense to have the light in the room be off, because if the room is well lit, Marv wouldn't need to turn on another light. Also, Harry's not wearing gloves. As a burglar, in the middle of winter, this is what leads to the gag of burning the McCallister M into his hand. Since the cat won't be able to heat up the door handle, I think instead you have Harry trip on his way up the stairs and he falls face forward into the doorknob with an M on it. This leaves an imprint on his head rather than on his hand. It's still funny, and since the stairs were slick, it fits. A cat can't throw paint cans though, so instead, he knocks them off the railing to hit the bandits, giving them less potential of generating the kind of kinetic energy that can kill. The tripwire traps could just as easily be long, feathery cat toy. When Kevin calls the police, have a phone with a speed dial emergency button on it, that way a cat can actually use the phone. While it can't speak, Kevin doesn't have to unnecessarily create a false identity and lie to the cops. Also, I think the spider would be way more likely to help Kevin on his own accord if he's a cat. Nature helping nature. I'd score this round 2-1 for the cat, making the total Cat 45, Kid 47. Kevin zip lines to his treehouse in the original movie, which is a pretty elaborate setup for an 8-year-old to do in just a couple hours. A cat could just jump onto a branch at the edge of the roof in order to get into the tree. Now you might say, why would these guys chase down a cat? And my answer is that Harry picks up the phone Kevin leaves off the hook, and the wet bandits know Kevin called the cops. They're not necessarily trying to chase down Kevin, they're just in flee mode and trying to get out of the crime scene as soon as possible to avoid the authorities. I think the kid gets 1 point for a cool zipline, but the cat gets 1 because there's no setup into climbing a tree. Score 46-48 in favor of the kid. When Kevin tries to escape, what I never understood about the original movie was that he cuts the zip line, which would take incredible strength from an 8-year-old, and the wet bandits just swing into a brick wall. Then, they get to Kevin's intended destination before him and are able to ambush him rather than being knocked out by the impact. The bandits no-sell in the regular movie, but I don't think Kevin needs to taunt them. They should just see Kevin go into a basement window that they broke earlier in the film and have Marv approach the window as Kevin goes inside. When Kevin sees the basement full of water, it's terrifying. If Kevin the cat falls in that water, he probably dies. He's got Marv on his tail, and he has to try to float to the other side of the room to get to the dry stairs. When he gets there, the door opens and it's Harry. As Marv is trudging through the basement, Harry picks up Kevin and holds him against the door. He rehashes the ways that he was hit as the man with the shovel takes him down before Marv can get there. This lets the man have a one-on-one opportunity with both bandits, making the exchanges more believable. It also means the old man doesn't have to swing the shovel harder than the bandits hit a brick wall 2 minutes earlier. This is 2 points for the cat, 1 for the kid, making the score 48-49 in favor of the kid. Kevin sets up cookies and milk for Santa in the original movie, but Cat Kevin would leave cat-based treats for Cat Santa. He wakes up on Christmas morning and walks around the house. Meow, meow. And no one's there. Has his wish been left unfulfilled? No. Mom walks in and sees her baby boy. Oh, that good boy? The one who's just caught Chicago's biggest criminals? Although technically the man with the shovel does get credit, which reunites him with his family from the church scene because now he's their hero. This is a story about growth, and in the original movie, Kevin doesn't get any credit, so it's not like the public acknowledges his involvement with the wet bandits. I feel like the police would want to investigate the fake call made to them by Kid Kevin, and there's no way he wouldn't be answering questions down at the station on Christmas morning. Like, they know the call came from the McCallister house, even if you give them a fake name. The police assumed the bandits accidentally hit a button on the phone in the cat version while they were looting the house. This whole scenario ties up neither if Kevin's a cat because he's never going to be a suspect the police need to interview. I'm going to give Kid Kevin 2 points for being able to shop and do laundry, but Cat Kevin is getting 3 because I don't believe Kid Kevin could have cleaned up the house with all those police around in the kind of time necessary for him to get to bed before it was light out. It's a 51-51 tie. I wasn't really expecting that. I thought the cat would win outright. I also underestimated the original movie's iconic moments that require a child. The only thing we can do is go into a short overtime. If we look at the future of the series, in the next movie, Kevin evades airport security to go on the wrong flight. In my version, a cat carrier just gets put on the wrong plane, which is much more believable because I don't think Kevin's mother would let him out of her sight next time they plan a vacation. It also makes sense because the McCallisters wouldn't trust leaving Kevin to a sitter for a second time, so they're changing behavior based on a traumatic event. Who does that kid have to befriend in Home Alone 2? The bird lady. And birds are the natural enemy of comedy cats. Home Alone 2 is about overcoming perceived notions about the things you're skeptical of in order for a cat to learn that turtle doves can be a gift too if you really mean them. You know what else you can do if you only need the voice of MacCauley Culkin? Not have to recast in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th installments, leading to a drop in the earning potential. You can introduce neighbor characters, neighbor cats, going to college, karate. The possibilities are endless. But I figured out that every MacCauley Culkin project's better if he's a cat. Home Alone is just the beginning. Uncle Buck, better if he's a cat. He falls asleep on the pancake. Only the Lonely, better if he's a cat. Most lonely people have cats. My Girl, better if he's a cat. Thomas J is a way better cat name. The Good Son, better if he's a cat. Who's seen a cat play a villain? Getting Even with Dad, better if he's a cat. Don't you remember his long hair? He kinda looked like a cat anyway. Pagemaster, better if he's a cat. A cartoon cat who has to wield power and go through a library? Richie Rich, better if he's a cat. Who's seen a cat on Mount Rushmore? Saved, better if there's a cat. Who's seen a cat be really mean to the pregnant girl in high school? So as the final seconds tick down in overtime, MacCauley Culkin the cat, 54, MacCauley Culkin the kid, 53. The winner, Kevin McCatlister. If you like CinemaGyver content, please click like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like it, comment, then click like, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to see more of this, pay me money!